Brr! Hello and welcome to another video. My name is Heather and as always I'm reading with a vengeance, and as always I hope you are as well. If you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. And if you are new to my channel, very warm welcome to you. I'm very glad to have you here. If you watched my last video, the first thing I said was how freaking hot it was. And then today, the first thing I'm saying is how freaking cold it is. So living in New England, that's how the weather is. It can change from 20 to 30 degrees day to day. So I recorded, I believe, exactly a week ago, and it was hot. It was high 80s, I believe. This morning, I woke up to 56 degrees. So, I mean, I hate to talk about the weather, but oh my God, this is what I'm dealing with. Today, I am going to talk to you about the books I have read so far in the month of June. I wasn't sure if I was going to have enough to talk about for a mid-month wrap-up, but fortunately, that's not the case. I have, I think, 8 or 9 books to talk to you about. And then I wasn't sure I was going to get a chance to record because it's been a crazy month. I have been traveling, just stuff has been going on, and so I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to record, but again, I made it work. I hope you all have been having a good reading month, and I had a little bit of a slump because of I had 2 DNFs at the same time. And I say at the same time because it was a physical book and the audiobook I was listening to concurrently. I had to DNF them both. That really bummed me out for a couple of reasons, and I'll talk about it when I talk about the books, but I'm going to talk about the books in the order that I read them. Hi you guys, this is Editing Heather. So I forgot to mention as I was recording, so I'm kind of sneaking up on 500 subscribers, which is mind-blowing, but super exciting. I don't want to be presumptuous. I'm still a little ways away, but hopefully. And I wanted to ask you guys, you know, I know a lot of times booktubers will do a Q&A to celebrate 500 subscribers. Is that something that you guys would be interested in? Because I've also been tagged in the random questions tagged by Gloria Z. Thompson, and I'm definitely going to do that eventually. Should I get some questions from you guys and then combine the random questions tag? Or is there something else that you guys would like to see or have me do to celebrate 500 subscribers? Do you care? I don't know, but I wanted to do something fun and I wanted to do something to celebrate it, because to have all of you here is just, I mean, I have no words, obviously. But anyways, I just wanted to get your input. So if you can either shoot me an email, which my information I think is in the About tab on my channel, or you can just comment on this video. I would love to hear from you, or just say hi. But what's a good idea to do to celebrate 500 subscribers? Help me out. So let's get started. So the first book I finished this month was Blacktop Wasteland by S.A. Cosby. If you watched my wrap up from last month, you know that I read Razorblade Tears last month and I absolutely loved it. I believe it was it my favorite last month? Oh, I read Missing Trees last month. So tied for first or very close second. I absolutely 5-star read, Razorblade Tears, and I listened to it, and the narrator, his name is Adam Lazar White, did such a phenomenal job that when I found out that he also narrated Blacktop Wasteland, immediately, as soon as I finished Razorblade Tears, I did a search to find the audiobook of Blacktop Wasteland and started listening to it immediately. He did not disappoint. So, Blacktop Wasteland, what's it about? So this follows, his name is Beauregard, but he goes by Bug, and he is a black man living in Virginia, and it seems to me, I mean, I've only read 2 of his books, but I feel like Cosby, his books are going to take place in Virginia most, if not all the time, kind of like, You know, Stephen King does a lot of stuff in Maine or Colorado. John Grisham does a lot of stuff all his stuff in Mississippi. Anyways, so it takes place in Virginia, and Bug is a reformed getaway driver. Basically, he's been a driver all his life. His father was kind of an infamous, or I should say notorious in the area, driver for criminal activity. And Bug kind of followed in his footsteps, but he kind of has gotten away from the life of crime, and he has done well for himself. He's got a mechanic shop, he's got children and a wife, and he's living the good life, but he's having a hard time financially. And he's really having a hard time making ends meet. He might lose his shop, he might lose his house. He's really at the end of his rope. And unfortunately, the timing is such that when an opportunity comes along to do one last job, a job as a getaway driver for what seems to be a super simple, easy, high payoff job, he can't turn it down. And so he does this job, but it ends up being a jewelry store heist, and the jewelry store is owned by a pretty big time gangster. So he is in deep, and it also goes terribly wrong. So the owner of this jewelry store, who is the head of an organized crime organization, wants his money back, wants his stuff back. So Bug gets drawn into another job that he doesn't want any part of, but his life is at stake, the lives of his family is at stake, and so he has to do this job. But he is trying to find a way, because he knows that this guy's going to kill him anyways at the end of this job, but he tries to find a way to kind of get out of it, somehow end up on top at the end. And again, just like Razorblade Tears, the characters leap off the page, the dialogue is snappy, it was absolutely engaging. I loved it. It's definitely a solid 4 stars. I would highly recommend it. I really enjoyed this one. And just like the 2 books take place in Virginia, he had one character. If he had more, I didn't pick up on it, but there was one character that was in Razorblade Tears. Oh, and I think Blacktop Wasteland came out first. So there was a character in Blacktop Wasteland that he carried over into Razorblade Tears, and it was one of the detectives, Detective La Plata. He's in both books. There's not a huge part in the book, but it's always kind of fun to have characters that you're familiar with kind of carry over into, it's not a series or anything like that. So I thought that was interesting and fun. And then just some of the snappy dialogue. I think he uses a lot of metaphors. I think that's what they're called. I get metaphors and similes confused. For instance, like, you know, stuff like, if wishes were horses, beggars would ride, or he could outrun the devil driving through hell, stuff like that. I think I read some reviews where people were kind of complaining that he used them too much. Maybe, but they're fun, and I thought it made for enjoyable dialogue, so I really enjoyed it, and I would recommend it. The next book I finished, I wouldn't really call it a book, it was a short story, and that is Finn by Stephen King. I listened to this because it's exclusively on Scribd, which I didn't have before, but I got Scribd just for this because I'm a huge Stephen King fan. I heard about this from Beth's All Booked. Yeah, she's got a Booktube channel, pretty successful one. You've probably heard of her. If not, she's pretty fun to listen to. She talked about it and she listened to it. I had never heard of it. And I'm like, what do you mean Stephen King has something out that I've never heard of? So downloaded Scribd and I listened to it. It is a short story. I mean, really short. I think it was only like 2 hours long. Follows Finn, and he's had bad luck his entire life. I think he's a teenager, maybe 16, 17 years old. I can't remember. But anyways, he's had bad luck all his life. This takes place in Ireland. One day he is basically kidnapped right off the street and taken to a place where he is interrogated by thugs saying, "Where's the money?" And Finn has no idea what they're talking about. So it's a case of mistaken identity, or is it? It just kind of goes from there. It's narrated by, I can't remember the name, but someone who has an Irish brogue. And so it takes place in Ireland. I feel like you need the Irish brogue to tell the story. I think it elevates it just a little bit. Not my favorite Stephen King short story, but I'm here for it. His writing is it just feels like home for me. One of the good things I got out of listening to it on Scribd was at the end, it talks about how Stephen King is coming out with a new novel in the fall. So I think it's going to be called Fairy Tale. Now, short story, I gave it 3 solid stars. The next book I finished in the month of June was the book of Form and Emptiness by Ruth Ozeki. As we know by now, she has won the 2022 Women's Prize for Fiction. I'm so happy for her. I'm a little bit surprised that this one won. I am not disappointed. Out of all the books, the short list, all 6 books, I was able to read them and I enjoyed them. And I think there was something for everybody in the short list. And while this wasn't my favorite, I absolutely appreciated this one. I read this one, this is out of the 6. I finished this one on like June, I don't know, 2 days before the winner was announced. This was the last one I was able to get to on the short list. So I finished it just under the wire. I did a video, which I will link down below. I ranked the 6 books on the short list, and then I gave my prediction of what I thought would win. And to be honest, I totally succumbed to peer pressure with picking that list because everybody was talking about it and everybody loved that book. In the video, I was waffling back and forth. My true prediction, I thought it was either going to be Great Circle or The Sentence. And then, like I said, I succumbed to peer pressure and I was wrong all the way around. So it doesn't really matter. So let's talk about this book. This is a chunker, but it was readable. And it follows Benny, who's a young boy who is dealing with grief and mental illness. His father has died, and he starts to hear voices from inanimate objects in his house. And that is exacerbated by the fact that his mother is also dealing with grief and mental illness. Hers is being manifested by hoarding. So she's bringing more and more stuff into the house, and Benny is hearing voices from the stuff in the house. It is an alternating perspective, partially from Benny's point of view and then partially from a book's point of view. And then I think there are a couple of chapters where it's from the point of view of his mother. What is her name? Annabelle is her name. There's a few chapters, I think, from her point of view too. So it follows this family, Benny and Annabelle, and they're struggling through the grief of losing father/husband, how they deal with it. You know, I felt it was the magical realism as far as a book being part of the narrator of the story. I didn't have a problem with that. I thought it was very similar to The Island of Missing Trees, in which a tree is narrating part of the story. I didn't have a problem with that. I had a problem, there's like, I think a chunk in the middle where it just kind of goes on this weird tangent that I don't know, I didn't feel like it added to the story. And I lost my way. I lost the thread a little bit. I really, really connected with the characters, with Annabelle and with Benny. I was enjoying I say enjoy, but I was enjoying reading about their story, as sad as it was. But because it went off on this weird tangent, it just kind of went off the rails for me there. I felt similarly with Great Circle, with this one, that it's too long. It's just too long. 150 pages less, and this would have been a higher rated book for me. Yeah, overwritten, I think, both Great Circle and this one, unfortunately. But I gave it 3.5 stars. I think I did. Yeah, I gave it 3.5 stars. I think also that I would have enjoyed this book a little bit more if it stuck with Annabelle a little bit more. I felt more connected to Annabelle. I don't know, maybe it was because she's an older character, so she's a little bit more fleshed out. The hoarding made me crazy. Yeah, her story arc just seemed to resonate a little bit more with me. Would I recommend this book? Obviously it's very well written. I think the story is a good one. If you have the patience to just get through books that are slightly overwritten, a little bit too long for their own good, then yeah, I would recommend this. Again, congratulations to, of course, Ruth Ozeki. I'm glad I read it. Yeah, 3.5 stars. The next book I read this month was My Sister, the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Brathwaite. So I listened to this one as well, and it was a enjoyable listen. This book takes place in Nigeria, and it follows Korede and Ayoola. They are sisters. Korede gets a call one night from her sister saying, my boyfriend is dead. And I need your help. So Korede goes to her sister's aid, and she goes with cleaning products because this is the third time that this has happened. So the story goes from there, and Korede is conflicted because this is her sister, and she doesn't want her sister to get hurt or to go to prison. But Korede also has a conscience, and she is worried about the male population of her town. She tries to help her, but she doesn't know what to do. Korede is also in denial, really, because Ayoola says each time that the incident happens in self-defense. So Korede kind of knows deep down what's going on with her sister, but yeah, she's in denial because she is her sister. And it's kind of funny because it also alludes to the fact that Korede is obsessive compulsive when it comes to cleaning. So it's almost like she's the perfect person to kind of clean up after her sister so that she doesn't get caught. Korede is having these conflicts as far as cleaning up after her sister and knowing her sister is a danger to the men she dates until her sister starts dating a doctor at the hospital where Korede works as a nurse. And it's a doctor that Korede has a crush on. So things change. And the story goes from there. This is a really great story about the relationship between sisters and what we do for our sisters. I wouldn't know. I'm an only child, but I've read a lot of stories about the sister relationship, and I absolutely adore those stories. And this is no exception. I thought this was a really well thought out story. I thought it was an interesting take and a unique way to handle a sister relationship. Absolutely unique story all the way around. There's lots of humor in this story as well, not only just the shenanigans that happen and the way they get out of certain tight spots, but also the dialogue between the sisters and the mother, because of course the mother doesn't have a clue. That's another thing. The mother absolutely favors Ayoola. Any kind of mishaps that Ayoola gets into, Korede is blamed for it. So it's a little bit infuriating, but it's handled with such humor that it's just, you can't help but laugh. And it's a relatively short book. It's only like 225 pages. So I think it was only like an 8-hour listen for me. Yep, solid 3.5 stars for this one. The next book that I read this month was One Good Dog by Susan Wilson. I listened to this as well. This has been on my TBR. This is one of those days that I was wondering what I was going to listen to next, and so I go to my Goodreads TBR and go back to the ones that have been on there the longest. And this one has been on my TBR since 2014. And what is this about? So this follows Adam March, a completely unlikable main character, but it is actually the point of the book. So Adam March he's basically got everything. He's got a high-paying job and he's super ambitious. I think he's on the cusp of being promoted to CEO. He's got a beautiful wife. He's got a beautiful daughter, big, beautiful home, status, social status, which is more important to his wife and daughter than it is to him. He is responsible for keeping his wife and daughter in that social status and keeping them in the best clothes and going to the best schools and all of that. And the stress ultimately gets to Adam, and he has a breakdown at work where he assaults his secretary. So he basically loses everything. He gets fired from his job. He is arrested and convicted, and his wife, of course, can't be attached to this kind of stigma, so she divorces him. So he loses everything, his home, his family, his job, everything. And he is sentenced to a year of community service working at a homeless shelter, volunteering or being voluntold to work at a homeless shelter. And of course, Adam looks down on all these people that he is helping. So basically it tells the story of his character arc, learning compassion and empathy, and life isn't all about driving the best car and wearing the best clothes and going to the best tennis clubs. And of course he learns all this working at this homeless shelter. This is also a dual perspective. This is mostly from Adam's point of view, but then you're also learning about another separate character, and that is a dog. And he is a pit bull who is a fighter. He's owned by some gang members and is a fighting dog. It tells his story and how he gets out of that situation, and then ultimately the dog and Adam meet and get together, and it's their story of how their lives become better and the things that they learn. It's a heartwarming story. I will say there was a point in this story that I almost hated the book, hated Susan Wilson. It almost went downhill. I don't want to spoil anything, but I will say that Susan Wilson knows how to manipulate your feelings. I was crying at some point, I think on 2 separate occasions towards probably the last 100 pages of this book. And again, I was listening to it, so I don't know. It's like the last 2 hours. I don't know. He had me worried. I thought I was going to hate this book. But anyways, it goes a different direction. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, but I don't want to spoil it and tell you. If you love, stories about the relationship between animals and humans, which if you've been watching my videos, you know that's like one of my favorites. This is a good one. Will I read another one of her books? Probably, just because, at least now I know she's going to mess with me, but then she picks up the pieces, so that's good. But I would recommend this book. Another thing that she did, there were a couple of subplots. Like for instance, when I first read the synopsis to the story, it says like in the synopsis that his secretary tells him that his sister called and left a message for him. And this is what sets him off. This isn't a spoiler. This is what sets him off because his sister has been missing since he was a child and just gone and presumed dead. But then it doesn't like carry on with that, not for a very long time. It doesn't carry on with that story. And that's what I thought it was going to be about. I thought he finds out what happened to his sister that had gone missing. Well, that's not even the main part of the story. And it's not even addressed until way further on in the story. So anyways, yeah, there's these subplots that leave you hanging. And so you have questions, but then she circles around and she does take care of those missing pieces. So yeah, this book had me on my toes, definitely. But I gave this book 4 solid stars. The next book that I read for the month of June was another audiobook, and this was Cover Her Face by P.D. James. So this is another one. Again, I went back to my TBR and I picked one that had been on my TBR for years. I'd never read P.D. James, and this was her debut novel, I found out. And this is the first of a series that she had. I believe the detective that it follows in the series is Detective Dalgleish. Sadly, this was a DNF for me. I think it was a generational thing. Because it takes place, I want to say in the 1940s, 1950s in England. I think this book was written around that time. I want to say it was published in 1962. I'm not sure. It uses the language of the time, and I really had a hard time with that, unfortunately. What it's about. So there's a family home. It's a well-to-do family. One of the maids, who is an unwed mother, she is discovered dead in her bed, and her baby is in the room with her. The baby is fine. But they find her dead, and there's lots of people in the house who have motivations to murder her because she has been, I guess, betrothed to the family's son, which is absolutely unheard of. If you're a well-to-do family, you certainly don't marry the help. So that's the mystery, and then the detective comes in from Scotland Yard to solve the mystery. Yes, so I just couldn't get past the language, and I'll give you I have a little excerpt here. Dalgleish and Martin were ensconced in heavy armchairs which flanked the fireplace. Even in that warm July day, there was a small fire burning, its faint incandescent flame hardly visible in a shaft of sunlight from the western window, and were offered cups of tea. This done, Bogart obviously felt that the obligations of hospitality had been met, and that it was the duty of his guests to announce their business. Those sentences throughout the whole book, I couldn't. Everything. The food, the decor, I just couldn't get past that type of language. So yeah, this was a DNF for me, unfortunately. Anybody else out there a P.D. James fan? I mean, I feel like it's an unpopular opinion. I don't know, I just couldn't get past this language. It just wasn't for me. And the next book that I attempted in the month of June was Katherine of Aragon, The True Queen by Allison Weir. I am so sorry, Gemma. So this is a book that I picked up because I joined the readathon that is being hosted by Gemma over at Gemma Books, Danny's Book World, and Emily at Novell Novels. And they're doing a readathon. This is one of 6 in a series by Allison Weir, and it's the 6 Tudor Queens series. This is the first one. They're reading one over 2 months, and so each of the 6 books will be read over a year. I gave this one a solid try. I think I read 200 pages. I read the first 10 chapters, and it was not an easygoing 10 chapters for me either. It was, again, I felt it was very slow. I felt it was very tedious. Again, with all the descriptions of everything everybody was wearing, the decor of every room, what the food looked like, what the wine decanters looked like. That was just too much. And then also, I love historical fiction, but one of the things that I love about historical fiction is that you take true events and then you add dramatic dialogue. And that was not the case here. Anytime Katherine had conversations with anybody, it was very vanilla. I mean, just what you would think she would say. But if it's going to be historical fiction, if you're going to add fictional spin to real events, then I want that dialogue to be snappy. I want it to be dramatic. I want there to be some personality in the characters, and there just weren't. The only personality I got from Katherine was that she was a young, naive girl. I mean, she had some terrible things happen to her, but I found her to be whiny and woe is me. I couldn't do it, and there's just too many books in the world, and I'm really sad about it. I haven't made the decision yet because, and this was hard for me because I think Anne Boleyn is introduced towards the end of this book, and then the next book is about Anne Boleyn, and I feel like Anne Boleyn would be a character that would be a little bit more engaging for me. I haven't committed to stepping away from the readathon. It really bums me out because I love these ladies and their channels, and the opportunity to, chat about these books directly was part of the reason why I joined this readathon, but I just couldn't get behind this book. I'm so sorry. So this was a DNF for me. And the last book that I have read so far for the month of June is Fun Home, a Family Tragicomic by Alison Bechdel. This is a graphic memoir that I picked up because I just did a video for book recommendations for Pride Month. I'll link that down below. And this is one of the ones I found. I had a very, very long flight, and so I thought, well, I could probably bust that one out on a flight, and I did. Allison talks about her growing up and her relationship with her father. This is not a spoiler, I think it says it on the back, but she has questions about her own sexuality as she's growing up, but she really kind of discovers herself once she goes to college, and she figures out who she is. Not long after she comes out to her parents, her father dies. And then after her father dies, it's starting to come out that he also might have been gay. That's the story that she tells here. I wanted to like this more than I did. I felt like a lot of it was like she compared her father to a lot of authors like F. Scott Fitzgerald, James Joyce, and then she also compared her family life as she was growing up to some of the novels that these authors wrote. They weren't just references to the authors of the novels, but they're like pages and pages of comparisons. I just didn't connect to that. I really went into this wanting to know more about her relationship with her father. I don't know, I felt that part was lacking a little bit. So I was a little disappointed there. But as far as graphic novels go, I thought it was well done. Illustrations, I mean, they're okay. I really loved the facial expressions that she put on her father, her mother. Those were the best. But other than that, the illustrations are pretty straightforward, monochromatic, which I don't mind. I mean, I really love a good, glorious color graphic novel, but this one I think this is an appropriate color scheme for the themes and the topics addressed in this book. But yeah, I would recommend it. There is some addressing of for when she came out to her parents and the reaction that she got. She also talks a lot about she dealt with an obsessive compulsive disorder as a teenager, which I thought was interesting. I related to that a lot just because I dealt a little bit with that as a teenager that I won't get into. And I think it's a really common thing for teenagers. And I think most teenagers grow out of it as she did. I connected with that part of the story. And, you know, I didn't dislike the story. I thought it was going to be one thing and it ended up being another. But I did give it 3 solid stars and I would recommend it. So that is it. That is what I've read so far. It's been a better month than I thought it was going to be. So yeah, what was that, 8 or 9 books? I don't know, I haven't counted. But yeah, so far that's what I've read. And have you read any of these? If you have and you have thoughts, I would love to hear about them. If you would comment down in the doobly-doo. Are you guys reading anything good? I would love to hear about it. Thank you so very much for watching. I really appreciate you being here. If you are still watching at this point, I'd really appreciate if you gave that like button a boop, and a subscribe would be wonderful. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.